Now we're going. Here we go.
Here we go. Here we are.
Yay.
Awesome.
Cool. All right. Well, let me give it 1 second here. I'm just readjusting my tabs every which way. Got it recording. I got it live streaming. And I'm just verifying that I can see comments and stuff here. Okay, there we are. Yay, go us. Cool.
Yep.
All right.
We're on.
We are on. I am not going to waste any time because I know people, I had some people interested in hopping on, so I'm sure they'll catch us. And I advertised you everywhere I could because for those that are just hopping in now or catching the replay, this is my dear friend Lauren, who is a boundary and crucial conversations coach, just meaning that she has a gift for having those hard conversations about what we need and making it feel less like we're justifying ourselves and more like we are taking charge of our own needs as a priority instead of putting them to the wayside. So is that about right, Lauren?
That sounds perfect. It sounds really good.
Good. Good, good. So we are super glad to have you here. I want to just ask you this question first because to me that and kind of ensures that we're all on the same page. But what is your definition of that, like boundaries, and what does that mean in your life and to you?
Okay, that is actually a really good question. So boundaries, a boundary, just like a boundary, what a boundary would be in like the physical world around us, is essentially a property line, which demarcates to people in relationship what belongs to who. And so in relationships with other human beings, sometimes ownership gets blurry. So like if you were to go to your local courthouse and you were to pull the property lines or the boundaries of your property, you would get a very, very, very clear and accurate map from the courthouse saying, this space belongs to me, this space belongs to my neighbor. But that is not as clear in human relationships. And in most cases, we feel like we don't even have property lines or boundary lines in our relationships. But essentially, what it means to me, and when I get confused about this or lost on this in my own life, or lose perspective, is that I was created with the capacity to be fully responsible for one human, and that is me. And so my property in a relationship is my feelings, it is my actions, it is my attitudes, and everything that belongs to me. The property of the other person in relationship with me, and whether that be my husband, my friends, my clients, my employees, my employer, my colleagues, their feelings, their actions, their attitudes, those things belong to them. And even as our children grow older, that is true as well, is that their feelings, their actions, their attitudes, that belongs to them as well. And it is not my responsibility, nor is it my place to micromanage the feelings and attitudes and actions of other people.
Huh. That was great. I love that explanation. I'm still digesting it. I think that's wonderful. And that, okay, guys, we're done. We've already learned so much in 5 seconds. That's awesome. So now you know already that this group primarily deals with the like holistic healing process, specifically from Lyme disease, but autoimmune kind of stuff applies because it's a similar mystery journey. And I think the common denominator that ties in a lot to boundaries is that many people, I almost want to say all, because I feel like it might be everybody that goes through this, has had boundary issues at one point or another with doctors, with or medical professionals in general, I shouldn't just say doctors, but medical professionals with family and friends, with themselves probably too. Now you had done a really awesome survey for us yesterday, and I know you got some feedback on like the primary topics people were interested in kind of hearing more about in relationship to boundaries. But yeah, what would you have to say about someone that is, medically working through stuff and setting boundaries too? I feel like boundaries are important for everyone, but when you're healing medically, like how does that look in a boundary picture? Why is that important for medical healing?
So I think it's true in every area of human well-being and flourishing. So it's as important as it is for our emotional flourishing, it is equally important for our physical bodies. Because basically what we tend to do as human beings is that we like to take the path of least resistance. And when it comes to boundaries, the path of least resistance is making other people responsible for our well-being. And this is especially true for our bodies, is that it's easier and there is less resistance, and it's this easier journey in terms of, like versus not taking full responsibility for your own health. If you put the doctor or the medical professional in the driver's seat of your health, and you put yourself in the passenger or the back seat of your health, and then if there is a crash, then it's their fault. If there is some kind of accident, it's their fault. If the music playing on the radio station is not what you like, it's their fault.
Right.
If I'm feeling gross today, it's their fault. Rather than taking responsibility and saying, well, if there's a crash, that was my choice. And I think a boundary that we need to make with ourselves and others is that when we we allow other people to be in the driver's seat, or we put other people in the driver's seat. So they don't necessarily take the driver's seat, which is something that is a very subtle, subconscious story we make up, is how they took control. They said no. They made me do that. That is, those kind of words and those kind of phrases are really typical of someone who is abdicating responsibility for themselves and their lives and placing it in the hands of other people. And so it is scary when it comes to our health to say, not to not give medical professionals a role, but really we need to acknowledge that the extent to which they play a role in our healing journeys is our choice. And we have full power over how much power they have. That is our choice. And the same is true for our friends and family who maybe do not validate our experience, who maybe question our experience, who maybe question our choices, as a result of our experiences. To say or to decide or to use the story, oh, well, I'm not getting better because I'm not supported by whoever it is. You're basically saying, well, I'm only ever going to experience health or wholeness or flourishing when these people get on board. What if they never get on board? Are you just never going to flourish?
Right.
And why? And a lot of the times is we prefer to make that decision of putting our health and our wholeness and our flourishing in other people's hands, because then when things don't work out, we tell ourselves we're not the ones to blame.
Like the scapegoat syndrome there.
Exactly.
Interesting. That's real true truth, right? So true. What are some signs maybe for anybody, or specifically people with medical complexities going on, what are some signs that their boundaries might be out of whack or that they might need to reevaluate boundaries?
So I think the first one is using words or terminology, like I explained earlier. They are, they say,
Okay.
like whenever you're like to, and sometimes you just need to take a step back from your own thinking and think about your thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And a good example of this was from my own life. It's not related to my medical health, but it's related to my mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Was I was struggling with depression. And it really came down to because I was waiting on someone else in my life to change. And a mentor, and I was just sitting and I was talking about how I was depressed and why I was struggling with this very, 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 very dark moment in my life. And my mentor just looked at me and said, "This is going to be very hard for me to hear, for you to hear, but you are going to be depressed for the rest of your life if you do not disconnect your mental health from this person's actions."
Wow.
And so um, that same kind of mindset that I had, like I didn't even realize that I was like hitching my wagon, I guess, to this person's life or their actions. But for her to say like, hey, like you need to listen to how you're talking about the situation. You're making everything about him.
Wow.
Where are your choices? Where is your responsibility? And I think the same can be true then for our mental health. And honestly, when it comes to boundaries, often it's not just like an isolated area of our lives. There are, like I was saying to you earlier, there are um, areas of our lives where we are stronger at boundaries than others. But quite often, like if you're having an issue with boundaries with your friendships or your employer, you're going to be having issues with boundaries with your physical health and so on. But the key warning sign is bitterness and resentment.
Mm.
That is the one, like if you can think of your car, and when something's going wrong with the engine or some other internal mechanism, warning lights go on the dashboard. And bitterness and resentment is one of the key warning lights that you need to watch out for when it comes to boundaries. Because basically, what those warning lights are telling you is that you are giving away your power to someone else and that you are making other people responsible and they're not living up to your expectations or your hopes, And so what I always say to people is like, we need to make a decision and we need to choose. Are we going to do an oil change when those warning lights come on? Well, we're going to have to replace an entire vehicle when the engine blows.
Mm.
And, like and you can probably attest to like with your own physical symptoms, like you get symptoms that we can ignore
Mm-hmm.
until the whole thing blows up. And then you've got this entire, like a healing journey that would have taken a few months is now taking years, or damage that could have been averted is now permanent. And the same is true for our boundaries and our boundaries within our relationships, that you can do an oil change, have a really crucial conversation or a series of crucial conversations, which sucks and is hard, or you can lose a friendship, or you can be estranged from your family,
Mm-hmm.
or you can lose a marriage, you know. And that takes, if you can recover from that emotionally, it takes years. I mean, how many of us are still reeling in the aftermath of a severed relationship, like where we could have dealt with small problems that maybe would have been really hard in the moment, but we would have been fine. And so resentment and bitterness, and and that often looks like, it can look like a surge of bitterness that comes out of nowhere. Like you could be totally fine with your life, and then you think of a person, and then all of a sudden the internal dialogue gets catty and bad. Or you can be fine with like 10 people acting a certain way, but the 11th person, there's just something about that person, and I've seen this with myself, with like medical professionals that I've worked with. For example, my pregnancy, I my last pregnancy, I did not honor myself and my boundaries with my medical professional. And so as my pregnancy progressed, I got more and more frustrated and bitter and irritated with my OBGYN, you know, and then as the pregnancy progressed, she was the problem. She didn't listen. She just wanted to force her way on me. But actually, I just didn't stand up for myself.
Right.
And that could have been in a conversation. It could have been in switching to a different professional,
Yeah.
or just saying, no, you will not do that. I do not consent to this,
Yeah.
whatever it was, you know?
That's huge. And I think like I think it probably happens to us more than we even realize. Um, because sometimes it's easier to just go with the flow if it's not that big a deal, but all those little things add up. And then, like you said, suddenly you're bitter and resentful and you don't even know why anymore. Um, yeah. And that's very true in all, as you said, all areas of life, but especially as we deal with medical stuff where we're trying to trust medical professionals to help us, but also I think it's really powerful that what you said about the fact that at the end of the day, we own our own health and we are our own advocates. That's it, like the end.
And you know,
uh,
the other thing about trust in a relationship,
yeah.
whether it be with a medical professional or your husband or your best friend, is that trust is deepened when it's tested. And
Right.
honesty tests relationships. And when when your relationship can handle the weight of honesty, of like real truth,
Mm-hmm.
then it gets stronger and you feel safer. So oftentimes we misunderstand and think, well, this relationship's going to be strong if we're both just happy in the relationship, if we both just get what we want. And that is not true. Relationships are strong when they are tested by truth
Mm.
and they can withstand it. And then they get stronger and stronger from there. And we feel safer and safer because we know that, hey, like I've said something that's hard to hear and you're still here. And not just kind of here, but you're here completely and fully for me and for us.
Another excellent nugget of advice. That's really you're correct. That's really true. Um, so I have one last question then, because I think we both agree like this is all great, but without action, how do we change bad patterns, bad habits, a past or decisions we've made that have compromised our boundaries in the past? So what are your easiest steps for instituting better boundaries right away? And I know that's like a huge topic, but if you could give us even just one nugget of how to improve today.
I would say I'll try and give you three.
Oh, all right.
The first is you need to know what you want. And you need to get really clear on, and sometimes that is the hardest part.
Yeah.
Why are you feeling slighted in a relationship?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we can't identify it. We can't identify that it's because our priorities are becoming third or last or whatever the case may be. Sometimes it's because we don't even know what we want.
Mm-hmm.
And how on earth are you going to honor yourself if you don't even know what yourself is asking for? So that's the first thing, is you need to sometimes just sit for a very long time and figure out what is it that you want so that you can ask for it. And then the second thing would be to take full responsibility for your life. Do not settle for, I don't have peace because of this person. Do not settle for, I can't feel like this because of that person. Do not settle for, I'm just going to be miserable because of that situation. Like when you take full and uninhibited responsibility for your existence on this planet and the quality of your existence on this planet, then that's when that's like the upward spiral, right? Instead of a downward spiral, that's an upward spiral in relationships.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to actually having a crucial conversation, like I like to use the, like, how do you actually say,
Hmm.
how do you actually sit with someone and ask for what you need? And so one of the, like, what does that conversation look like? And that is where I really, like, that is probably my number one work or task within a boundaries coaching relationship is we do the other stuff I just spoke about, and then we sit and we work together on, now, how are you going to have this conversation? But one of the things that I say to people is that you need to use the Goldilocks test on the words that you're going to choose and the tone you're going to choose. Is this too hard? So are you being cruel as a way of controlling the situation or the relationship, which is what we do? We manipulate and we be passive aggressive in the name of truth telling. Is it too soft? So are you hiding some of your truth? Are you softening the truth of your experience to protect the other people? That is also manipulation. Or is it just right? So that's the Goldilocks test. Is what I'm going to say too hard? Is it too soft, or is it just right? And then to just keep working with yourself. Don't be mean. Don't be an asshole because you're angry and you need to get that energy out of you. Don't be too sweet and kind and skirt around the issue, because that is actually also manipulative. But what is just right? What is completely true, but also kind?
Nice. That's super helpful. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Lauren, that was a great summary of some good boundary behaviors. And thank you for some action steps forward with that, because
Absolutely.
for me, that's always the hardest part. So I don't want to leave people hanging with tips. So if it's cool with you, Lauren, I'm going to get ways to contact you from you, and I'll include them in the description if people want more help with this topic, and they can reach out to you directly for that. But we are just so glad you could come this afternoon and share this with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. Anytime.
I know you love it. Well, I appreciate it. And we will keep you guys posted all about the next Journey On interview series and who we're going to feature next. But I'm really enjoying the topics we've had, a lot of mental health discussion and autonomy discussions. And so I think that we're getting somewhere with those topics, helping us in our own healing journeys. So thank you, Lauren, and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks. You too.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye.
There we go.